Peace and blessings. How's everybody doing? It's the bearded one. I wanted to hop on real fast. We're going to discuss a few things, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody who bought this book, Easy, A Guide to Mindfulness and Meditation, a book written for children 8 to 12. Teach them mindfulness, teach them how to regulate their emotions through learning how to control the mind, learning mindfulness and meditation techniques to help them reduce stress, help them to deal with tough situations, to help them find a power within themselves. Everybody who supported the book so far, thank you so much. And if you want a copy, you can just go to www.devinmccrory.com. That's www.devinmccrory.com. All right, thank y'all for that. Tonight is gonna be some fun. I think tonight is gonna be a good one. We're gonna discuss the ways that that trauma can influence people's desires, whether it be relationship desires, sexual desires. We're going live to discuss that. Right now, I'm just waiting for Insight Timer to kick in. But I wanted to come on a little early to speak to everybody on YouTube and Instagram. And then I'll be speaking on Insight Timer in a few minutes. So when Insight Timer kicks in about 30 seconds, we'll begin. But let me just say thank you to everybody who supported. Thank you to everybody who will support, and anybody who has any questions, feel free to DM me. Feel free to holler at me. We'll discuss it. I'll give you some information and some insight on the book, and we'll get it rocking and rolling. All right? Man, let me just adjust this real quick. All right. So we're going to begin in about 13 seconds. Give me 13 more seconds to start Insight Timer. And we're going to begin. Anybody who's watching this, I hope all is well. All right. The live has started. Anybody watching this, I hope all is well. I hope you're blessed. I hope you finding peace. I hope your journey is going well. Your journey to take your spirituality to the next level. I hope that's going well. If you're in the house with me, give me a salute. Say hello. Say peace. Say ashe. Say blessings. Say aloha. Whatever you say. Whatever you say in your culture. Whatever you say in your spiritual tradition. I need to say peace and blessings. Namaste. Tom, what's going on? Light back to you. Caitlin, hello. Blessings. Okay. Camila, glad you're here. Ciao, okay. Jay, namaste. All right. I'm glad that everybody's here. We're going to wait. And for those of y'all who've never been here before, and love and light. That's beautiful. So for everybody who's new, who haven't been here before, usually I'll wait till about 7 minutes in. I'll get started at the 7-minute mark. But in the meantime, between time, I like for everybody just to come in, say hello. My hair grows fast. Yeah, it does. I cut this down now. I cut the top part down. I got tired of maintaining it, so I cut it down. Now I want to just cut it off again. But chances are I'm going to have to grow it for the wintertime. Hola, Daniela. Camila, your first time here? Okay. Glad to have you here. Peace and blessings. Man, you saw me last week? Yeah. Kent Washington. Okay, what's going on? Rebecca, how are you? I'm glad everybody's here. It seems like a lot of people were interested in this topic, so I'm glad that I picked it. Seattle, okay. The birthplace of grunge. Santa Claus, Indiana. First time, Ashley. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. So Caitlin, you excited for this topic? I think this is one of those things where a lot of people need to have this conversation. Tom, you're in New Hampshire, okay. Awesome. I'm over here in Maryland. It was raining last night. I was hoping it was going to rain tonight too. Okay, you're in Lorette, Manitoba, Canada. Okay, Tanya, nice to have you here. Woodbury, New Jersey. Okay. Sarah, I'm glad I grabbed your interest. Michelle, what's going on? How you doing, Michelle? How you been? I left the Nutmeggers. Yeah. I did. I had to leave. My ex-wife left and wanted to bring the kids down here. So of course I got to stay with my babies. Oh, okay. You're in Kent, England. Okay. Makila. Okay. Peace and blessings. Okay, Jay, you want to go to sleep. The universe nudges you hard. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. A Garfield Bulldog. Okay. Bulgaria. Wow. So we got a lot of people from all over the place who are, who want to talk about this topic. I'm glad you guys are here. This is something that I think a lot of people need to go over. Super Finland. Okay, you got somebody from Finland in the house. I don't think anybody from Finland's ever popped up for one of my lives. You live in Nebraska? Okay. All right. Peace and blessings to everybody who's here. I really appreciate you guys staying up with me, hanging out with me. And before we begin, and I never really do this. I was doing it a lot at one point because I was trying to raise funds to publish the book. But I do want to mention that I appreciate all donations. You don't have to donate. The knowledge is free, like Harris once said. But any donations you can provide, I appreciate it. My donations are going to go to helping me promote the book that I wrote. I wrote a book for kids 8 to 12 to teach them how to meditate. I just want to promote it more. I want to invest a little bit more in marketing because I'm not a big marketing guy. I don't know how to promote nothing. Oh, Tom, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm just trying to figure out how to invest in getting more people to Muriel, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate the donations, everybody. So yeah, we're trying to get the word out to the young ones. I used to work at a school. I used to work at a school, and I was working with a young man who was I worked with him from 4th grade. Wow. So from I think 4th grade. Yeah, KRS-One. Aaron, thank you for the donation. I work with a kid. I used to work at a public school in my hometown, Hartford, Connecticut. There's a lot of kids who had all kinds of behavior issues and anger issues and trauma. Mui, thank you for the donation. So I started teaching meditation at the school. I was doing it free of charge for a little while. A lot of kids benefited from it. So I kind of wrote the book to help those kids who might need a little bit of support in school, who might need mindfulness just to learn how to regulate their own emotions and just be in touch with themselves and just to feel more confident. Meditation helped me to feel more confident. All right, good evening from Brittany. How you doing? Upstate New York. So yeah, donations are going to go to help me promote the book more, put it out there more, and figure out how to market it and stuff. So I appreciate any and all donations. And that's what's going on, my brother. What's going on? Peace. What's going on, man? So we're going to have a good conversation tonight. We're almost at the 7-minute mark, but thank you everybody who showed up. Ina, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's donating tonight. We really appreciate this. And this is gonna be a good conversation. I did take into account that when you discuss trauma, there's some people who might be affected by it, people who might be hurt by it, who might feel triggered by it. But trust and believe, I definitely understand to choose my words carefully and present my ideas carefully. So if anybody's nervous about being triggered by the conversation, trust me and believe me, I've been dealing with individuals and working with individuals and supporting individuals with trauma for a long time. So yeah, and I'm always careful and cautious when I'm dealing with people and helping them with their mental health issues, trauma issues. I try my best to be as discerning with what I say as possible. So if anybody felt like this was something you wanted to talk about, but you weren't, you were a little nervous about being triggered, don't worry, we got you. And plus we're here with everybody. And I can honestly say one cool thing about my live streams, I always have amazing and supportive people who come to watch the live streams. And I've noticed a lot of support. People support each other here. So I'm glad you guys are here. So don't worry about any of that. We got you. All right. And we are just about at the 7-minute mark. So let's begin. We unfortunately live in a culture where bizarre people, or bizarre behaviors, I should say, are glorified. Things that are unhealthy and sick get glorified because we figured out ways to monetize them, right? We figured out ways to monetize dysfunctional relationships. We figured out ways to monetize violence and aggression. We figured out ways to even monetize abuse of other people, which is very, very, very unfortunate. So it's sometimes to the point where it's hard to tell. Mindfulness coach, what's going on? So it's hard for a lot of people to tell what's healthy behavior and what's not healthy behavior, because typically in any culture, healthy behavior is rewarded. Unhealthy, dangerous behavior gets punished and penalized. But now we live in a culture where up is down, down is up, and we've blurred the line between what's right and what's wrong. And I use the word righteous all the time. People feel that that's an antiquated word, but I think that's a very important concept. It's a very important concept to understand what it is and what it means to be righteous. Because if you're righteous, that means you're living in peace within yourself and trying to live in peace with other individuals around you. And at the very least, you want to be righteous just to avoid mistreating yourself and mistreating others, right? But what happens? Quite often, because we live in a sick culture, things that are unhealthy become alluring to us. And also, if you study a lot of our culture, a lot of people, and I've learned to see it and learned to identify it because I've worked with it for so long. A lot of people have unhealed trauma. They have unhealed trauma, and you can see it once you work with people with trauma. Thank you, Ann. Bless you too. We live. I mean, I've worked with people with trauma for a very long time, so a lot of times I can see how people talk. I can see how they act. I can see when something's going on. And I might not be able to identify 100% of the time, but a lot of times you see certain behaviors and know they're traumatic. Certain desires I know are traumatic now, right? But so much of the trauma that has affected us, that has inundated itself within us, is steering our behavior. And quite often it steers our behavior in ways that are negative and hurtful, but negative, hurtful stuff is considered cool. So how can you know what's right and what's wrong? How can you know if something is destructive? How can you even know if something is hurting you? I've spoken to individuals who've gone through trauma and they drink to deal with the trauma, and you talk to them about their drinking and they think that drinking is awesome. They think that puking and waking up with a hangover is awesome. You know, people who might use drugs. At one point in time in the music industry, there was a lot of hip hop music songs that was about popping pills. And I used to work at a drug rehab facility. I know that pill popping phase that hip hop music was going through and rap music was going through. I seen the effects of it. I saw how destructive it was. A lot of the kids that I work with died from ODs because they thought those pills were innocuous. Eating disorders, yes, another one, Caitlin. And a lot of kids who I worked with at the drug rehab facility, they thought popping pills wasn't a big deal, and a lot of them would die. You know, not a lot of them, but I've lost some kids that I got close to who died from mixing because we live in a culture that glorified the use of pills, recreational use of pills. They talk about the opioid crisis, and that was you're 100% correct. That terminology is correct. Abby, how you doing? And if only they had a way of knowing that what they were doing was destructive, and it was also the result. Hey, how you doing, Cecilia? It was also the result of their trauma. That's why so many kids who were listening to hip hop music were popping pills because they were dealing with heavy trauma. They were dealing with heavy trauma. So that trauma was leading them to engage in certain behaviors. The behaviors get glorified by the music industry, by the film industry, and they end up doing things to hurt themselves. That destruction is glorified. And I thought of a term, and it might sound a little clumsy, but the term damage. You know, damage, destructive appetites masking as godly energy. It seems wonderful and beautiful when you pursue pleasure, when you pursue instant gratification, but you're actually pursuing that gratification because it's destructive and it's a part of your trauma. But let's go back a little bit. I don't want to go too far afield. Let's bring it back a little bit. Let's just simply define one thing. Let's define what is trauma. And I thought about it long and hard, and I think this is a good definition of what trauma is. Trauma is the emotional response to a terrible event. The response is so severe that it can affect the nervous system, memory, sleep patterns, behavior, and identity. I'll read that again. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. The response is so severe that it can affect the central nervous system, memory, sleep patterns, behavior, and identity. Individuals who go through trauma, and if anybody else has gone through trauma here, I know for a fact you're not sleeping right, or you're not eating right, or you have this strange thing where certain things that are minimally stimulating can terrify you. A certain sound, a certain smell, being in a certain place, things that shouldn't have any effect on you have a severe effect on your central nervous system. And that's what they call it, have anxiety attacks, panic attacks, things of that nature. And we're not trying to trigger you. You're in a safe space. But I'm only talking about this because I think it's important to understand the effects that trauma can have on your very body. Trauma is an emotional response to something, but those emotional responses, so we have this vivisectionist way of looking at our entire body. our entire self. You see the mind, body, and soul as separate things, but all of those things are working in concert with one another. So your emotions are happening in the body. They're happening in the central nervous system. They're happening in the brain. Your heart and your brain are not two separate, relegated phenomena. They're the same. Your heart and your brain are the same. Your emotions and your body are the same. So a lot of times what happens, those severe events create a neurological response. That neurological response causes a response in the central nervous system. And then your central nervous system is out of whack. It becomes out of whack. All because of that trauma. That trauma is affecting us and changing your very body. Trauma can heighten the fear response or repress it in some instances. And I know I've been through a lot of trauma. I've seen some things growing up, and I grew up in the inner city. We grew up, we didn't have a whole lot of things. And the trauma of poverty, the trauma of seeing violence, trauma of seeing abuse in a household, trauma of panic attacks. Now I'm 41 years old, and one thing about me, I do feel like I'm a fearless person. But at the same time, I know a lot of times my fearlessness is based upon the fact that I've been through trauma. My fear response doesn't work the way it's supposed to. We're all supposed to have a fear response. My fear response don't work. It kind of like lags sometimes. Like I don't feel fear until like I think about it later on. Right? So some sensory experiences, like I mentioned before, can trigger a fear response. And we were just talking about, oh, thank you for the donation, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. We were just talking about how a certain smell, certain sound, certain music can trigger that response within you, right? So this trauma thing is happening and it's affecting you on a very deep physical, psychological, neurological, and I will also say spiritual level. And a lot of times these responses that your body generates are inappropriate responses to certain stimulation. They are inappropriate responses to certain stimulation. When I say stimulation, I mean sensory stimulation, sounds, smells, things of that nature. And not only do you have the fear response, but there's other inappropriate responses that you can have. I'm going to tell you guys a quick story. And this story was a shock to me. And I'm a hard person to shock. I was working at a drug rehab facility. For anybody who follows my live streams, I always mention how I used to work at a drug rehab facility for adolescent males. A lot of them went through trauma. A lot of them dealt with sexual abuse, things of that nature. I remember I show up for work and it was a crazy day. As soon as I walk in, boom, there's a fight breaks out. Now, usually when I work, it's usually pretty cool. I'm good at my job. Kids typically like me. So I typically can, avoid those kinds of crazy situations. But as soon as I walk in that day, boom, there's a fight. Two kids are scuffling, fighting. One of the guys that I used to work with, Ian, he breaks up the fight, right? And then I look over in the corner and I see a kid, and I'm going to choose my words carefully. There's a kid over in the corner, fully aroused, touching himself over in the corner. Why was he doing that? He was doing that simply because he had gone through sexual trauma and violence. Sexual excitement and violence have become one and the same in his mind. So he got aroused, even though he was afraid and scared of what was happening around him. The fear and the sexual arousal became one and the same. So the fear of these other kids fighting, the adrenaline of seeing violence sexually aroused him, and he right over in the corner. So everybody saw this, and everybody kind of like freaked out a little bit. But immediately I knew that this is a kid who went through some kind of trauma. And a lot of people live like that. A lot of people have gone through these experiences that are traumatic and abusive, but at the same time, they create a sense of bonding, what they call trauma bonding, or a sense of sexual arousal. And it creates a situation in which you almost develop an affection for the abuser, or you develop an intense passion for these abusive and toxic and destructive relationships. And a lot of times we overlook it because it's been normalized in our culture. We normalize it in our culture. We normalize it when a man who's been exposed to sex at an early age disrespects women. I used to work with a kid. He used to be he was a great kid, fun, charming, but with us as men, he would pull us aside and let us know exactly what he was thinking. And what he was thinking was usually pretty toxic when it came to women, because at a young age, he got, molested by his babysitter. which is a story. I've heard this story way more times than I care to admit. So in his mind, he had to abuse women around him in general. He would tell you up front, I don't have respect for women. I got molested by my babysitter when I was 8. She was like 15, 16. So I don't respect women. So for him, sexual arousal was based upon the degradation of women. And there's a lot of men out there who live and think like that. They're the victims of trauma, but because that mentality of preying on women is glorified in our culture, we think it's just normal. A lot of people think, oh, he's just a player, or he just got a lot of women, or he's just charming, or he just got swag, he got game. Really, you're a predator. So a lot of men out there who are predatory in their disrespect for women. And he's a victim of trauma, but we don't see it that way simply because we haven't been trained to see it that way, and because our culture glorifies it. So this is a dude who gets sexually aroused when he abuses women. And then what happens is hurt people hurt people. So these women, they become sexually aroused at being abused. And a lot of times when you see women who are just dating these guys who are just toxic and destructive and abusive and drug addicts, a lot of times these women will think to themselves, well, you know, I just feel bad for them. When they feel like, I don't know what's going on. Why do I keep dating these same guys? Why do I keep ended up in these unfortunate situations? Because the trauma has affected your body. And now that pain and pleasure have become bound as one experience. And also because of like Stockholm syndrome, you have an affection for your abuser. Because these abusers are usually very cunning people. They'll treat you like crap. And after they treat you like crap, they'll do something to please you. And it happens a lot of times in parental and child relationships too. And you take that with you into your life as an adult. You know, there's a lot of adults who will verbally abuse their children, curse their children out, tell their children, I hate you, or you're no good, curse at their kids all day. And then it's like, okay, let's go to McDonald's. You feel like if you feel sorry for them, if you love them enough. And most likely that's a connection to your trauma. Because you probably, and I'm just guessing, Amber, you probably never got enough love. So you always felt like you had to work hard to earn that love. And a part of you was trained to think that you deserve to be abused to get that love. And the abuse probably won't even be necessarily physical abuse. It could just be emotional, psychological abuse. And that's what happens to a lot of people. Trauma bonding. You get hurt, you get traumatized, and somebody does something to give you pleasure. You get hurt, you get traumatized, or you're in a constant state of pursuing the love that you didn't get as a child. That's an attachment issue. If you have insecure attachment, toxic people will prey on that. And your pursuit of their love, your pursuit of their approval is a part of your trauma. And you feel like when I'm with this person, everything is great. If I could just make them happy, if I could just make them love me. Books for adults next. Yes, I'm working on one for teenagers, then I'm working on one for adults. And you see this all the time. And I'm going to keep going back to what I was saying earlier about how it's glorified in the culture. It's glorified in the culture for men to have these toxic behavioral patterns that are the result of trauma. And it's glorified in the culture that you have a lot of women who just hate men. And that's the result of trauma too. But because hating men is considered cool, hating women is considered cool, being a player is considered cool, throwing your body at men who just want to use you is considered cool. How can you identify when your behavior is toxic and unhealthy? And the thing about it is that pattern of pain, pleasure, we glorify it. I think the rapper Ja Rule, I think that was the name of like his second or third album, wasn't it? Something like Pleasure and Pain or something like that. Even the way a lot of people have sex, that pain physical pain has to be a part of it. Being restrained, being degraded during sex, being held down aggressively during sex, hurt during sex. That's a part of trauma, but all that stuff is considered to be cool. You got 50 Shades of Grey where you got some chick chained up to the wall. The man is abusing her and has mastery over her, as opposed to them coming together to form a sexually respectful union. You got this dude who's obviously psychopathic and toxic, but we put it in a movie and now it's considered cool. 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Psychopathic Toxicity. And that's the thing. A lot of people get stuck in this pattern where their trauma has to keep acting itself out until you heal. Until you heal, your trauma is going to keep acting itself out. So if you were a person who was sexually abused as a child, you'll carry that with you as an adult until you heal. If you're a person who were neglected, then you're going to look for people to neglect you until you heal. If you were a person, Amber, how do you heal? We're going to get to that too. But until you heal from your trauma and from your pain, you're continually going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over and over again. Things from your childhood. If you had a parent who walked away, then you're going to constantly feel like you have to earn that parent's respect, to earn that parent's love. You take that with you into your relationships. Or even worse, you take it with you into your relationships and you begin to find healthy, stable relationships boring. Attraction is redemption for a lot of people. Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of people, because they're trying to repeat these toxic patterns that they experienced as children, they take these things with them into their adult life. And what happens is when somebody is not toxic towards you, when somebody is not degrading you, when somebody is not humiliating you, feeling alone, Gonzo, we're going to get to that too. I know you guys have a lot of questions, and definitely we're going to get to all of that. But like I was saying, it gets to the point where some people don't even feel fulfilled in relationships unless the relationship becomes toxic or deadly. Some people feel unhappy. You know, a lot of times we talk about women who like quote unquote bad boys, and there are some women who just like guys who are a little risky, a little dangerous. But I'm seeing it, and a lot of times I'm seeing that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of men and women who engage in these relationships where they need the drama. And if they're in a relationship where there's no drama, Jen, thank you for the donation. If they're in a relationship where there's no drama, they will create the drama. They'll create the toxicity in a relationship if they can't find it there. Even when they say to themselves, let me go find somebody who respects me and somebody who loves me. And then they sabotage the relationship simply because they're trying to relive that pattern of trauma. You know, a lot of times on an unconscious level, you'll see people who are in healthy relationships, they'll start to sabotage a relationship and push the other person away because they feel like on an unconscious level, they're just trying to relive that same trauma over and over again. Trauma affects your central nervous system. Your central nervous system affects how you think. It affects how you feel. And I mentioned it in one of my last live streams. Why do they call it feelings? Because you feel it in your body. The anger, you feel it in your body. And the lust, you feel it, of course, in your body. Of course you feel it in your body because your central nervous system is being affected, which is going to affect you on all levels. Mind, body, spirit, your emotions is going to affect you on every level. Your central nervous system is the vehicle that, you know, that your consciousness utilizes to maneuver and navigate this body and for you to breathe and live. So how you breathe is going to be affected. And that's called a feeling. So a lot of times what happens with us is that we keep going through the same patterns over and over again until we heal. And then that pleasure and that pain gets stuck together. And instead of you being in a relationship that's loving and sane and stable, you end up in a prolonged death ritual. That's what a lot of relationships become when individuals are stuck in a traumatized state. They become this a prolonged death ritual. They have to keep symbolically killing themselves over and over and over again. And then it becomes an even worse cycle because it becomes a cycle of guilt and shame. And then you look for love and peace, and then you feel like you don't deserve it or you can't handle it. When you destroy another relationship, then that guilt and shame comes again and you repeat the pattern. How do you change the pattern? How you change the cycle of creating drama in a healthy relationship? Well, you know what? Let's start answering some of these questions because I see a lot of people have a lot of questions, and so let's just get right to it. First thing you have to do is understand that it's okay to seek support. You know, when I was going through the stuff that I was going through with my depression for a very long time, I thought that I could drink it away. I thought that I could, you know, I went for a little pill popping phase, not for a long time. It's the pop pills. And I remember I was going through intense depression and having panic attacks, anxiety, all of that stuff. And I felt like I could ignore it. And I was supposed to like be strong enough to get through it. And eventually I had to say to myself, you know what, I need a therapist. And then on top of that, you know, like when a prophet is given the word of God, they can't keep it within themselves. You have to have that same intense passion to figure out what's wrong and handle the problem. And you must believe that the problem can be handled. You have to believe in your own healing. You have to believe in your own healing. Whatever you believe is going to manifest. When I was going through depression, I said, if I meditate and learn mindfulness, I'll overcome it. And I did. And I mean, I was one of them individuals, I'll break down in tears, and I was really mentally unstable to the point where, before I got married, my girlfriend, who I ended up marrying, she became my wife. She said, I think you need medication. That's how severe it was. Now, I didn't take medication. I was nervous about taking medication, but that's my path. If you need medication, it's okay to take it. If you need a therapist, it's okay to go to a therapist. And you're gonna need an external eye anyway, because you're stuck in the middle of the storm. Imagine if you're walking in the storm and the rain is coming down and the wind is blowing, you're not gonna be able to see. You need somebody outside the storm who's looking out the window saying, hey, watch out, there's a car. Watch out, you're gonna walk into that tree. You need the external eye, and you need a professional who's gonna help you and support you. How do you truly convince yourself that you can believe something? Well, what helped me, honestly, was the fact that I combined my spirituality with science. I combined my spirituality with science, and I was introduced to the concept of neuroplasticity. With neuroplasticity, your brain can change. So if my brain can change, that means that all I have to do is figure out how to change it. And so the negative neurochemical activity and the negative traumatic patterns that were influencing my behavior and my moods, I had to work really hard to change it. But I didn't get, and that's another thing. A lot of people will put the effort in, and if they don't get changed like that, it doesn't work. Because that's the tricky thing about depression. Depression takes away your motivation, right? So a lot of people will try something one time, it doesn't work, and they immediately lose motivation. Whereas with me, I remember when I first started meditating to help me deal with panic attacks, I would meditate 5 minutes every single day. Every single day without missing any days. And a lot of times things don't work because if you're depressed, you lose your motivation, you'll try for like a week, and if it doesn't change your life in a week, you're like, oh, it doesn't work. Trust me, I've met so many people, and I teach mindfulness and meditation. I've met so many people who say, I tried meditating, it didn't work. How long did you try it for? I tried it like one time. I'm like, what? It took years for your brain to become what it is now. So give yourself at least a year to change some of that. But a lot of people, they want immediate gratification. And a lot of people, because of depression, because of anxiety, they don't want to put the effort in. But if you believe it by studying the science of it, this is not I don't teach faith-based information. Yes, I'll talk spirituality. Yes, you'll hear me quote the Bible. You'll hear me quote the Quran. You'll hear me quote the Bhagavad Gita, right? You'll hear me quote all of these things. But I'm quoting these things because I've found connections between these spiritual things and science. So it's about understanding the science. And I said to myself, I want to change how I think and improve myself. I actually went to school. And this might not be the move for everybody, but I went to college and got my associates in psychology. And then I was working on getting my bachelor's in social work. So because I could study, I studied attachment styles. I studied the effects of trauma. I studied the effects of culture. And because I studied it, I could see the science behind it. And once you can see the science behind it, it's not an issue of belief. It's just an issue of knowing. You know what I mean? That's how you truly believe it, by knowing it. I studied it for a long time. I studied meditation. I started studying meditation when I was 25 years old. And I'll move to the next question in a second. I studied meditation when I was like 24, 25 years old. I couldn't get into it. But I studied it enough where I understood how it works. So when I started having panic attacks, I said, okay, it's time for me to use what I learned. And that's when I began the process. I saw somebody ask the question of what kind of meditation that I start with for 5 minutes. I started off with an affirmation. I realized that a lot of times my anxiety and my depression was based upon thoughts of the past, moments where I had been hurt, moments where I had been disrespected, moments where I felt worthless. So I would think about those moments all the time, or I was worried about things that would happen in the future. So my thing was, I would just sit for 5 minutes, and it started off by saying, I am in the present moment. So for 5 minutes, that's all I did. I am in the present moment. And I had to literally train my brain to focus on the here and now. And in the here and now, I'm safe. In the here and now, I'm good. Amber, you were saying something. Let me see if I can find that statement. Sorry, I'm trying to read all this stuff as it comes down. You hyperventilating? Okay. Right, and that happened. That happened to me too. With meditation, when I first started meditating, it was cool, but then I started experimenting with different things, different styles of meditation, and I remember some repressed emotions came up, and it was at first for like 5 minutes, I was like, "Oh my god!" I remember all of this stuff from like years ago. I'm like, "Oh my god!" But then I said, "I'm in the present moment," and by learning mindfulness meditation, I was able to channel my emotions and regulate my emotions, and I didn't just fly off the handle. Sarah, you're very welcome. 38 years late, Rick. Well, you know what? Better late than never, as they say. But going back to what we were talking about, you have to remember whatever is within you, and I spoke about this on my other live streams. I called it mirror theory. Whatever is within you is going to manifest around you. So if there's sickness and toxicity within you, it's going to manifest in your life around you. So one of the things that you have to do in order to change your life and change certain patterns is to begin changing yourself. Begin by changing yourself. And that means that you're going to have to deny yourself. You're going to have to become abstemious. You're going to have to become mindful. And when I say abstemious, all I really mean is you're going to have to learn to be very, very, very moderate and abstain from certain things. You have to abstain from certain things. And that's the thing. That's the thing with trauma. Trauma makes it so that the emotion hits, you have the response. And that's why mindfulness is important, because mindfulness gives you a little space between the stimulation coming in and your reaction. With trauma, stimulation comes in, you have to respond. But with mindfulness, you're aware and you can say, hold on, wait a second, my stomach is getting tight. Shoulders are getting tight. Let me relax for a second. Why am I getting so triggered? And you're able to calm yourself down and be mindful, and you're able to identify, and you're able to be abstemious and abstain from these reactions. Somebody might say something to you, and because you got yelled at a lot as a kid, your response is, I'm going to yell back. But when you become mindful, you can abstain, and you can say to yourself, I'm not gonna react. And especially if you're a traumatized person, most people who are traumatized drink, smoke pot pills, do weed, do ecstasy, all of that stuff. So in order for you to make change, you're gonna have to abstain. That's one of the things I had to do when I was going through depression. Of course, you always seen. I remember I didn't have a car, and I remember I was going through depression. I used to like hop on a bus. I used to hop on a bus with a fifth of Jack Daniels and just be in the back of the bus just drinking the fifth. You know what I'm saying? But then in order for me to handle the trauma that I was going through, guess what I had to do? I had to take a break from drinking. And then, of course, it's going to be stressful days. You feel like, oh, man, I need a drink today. But I had to abstain. I had to abstain so that I could face my pain and face what I was going through. And it was tough. Yeah, the house, the guest house. Yep, by Rumi. I love Rumi. And I love that poem. The mirror quote, yeah, whatever is within you is going to reflect in the world around you. That's what I said, Elizabeth. But anyhow, going back to what I was saying, it's very, very, very important that we learn to be mindful. But let's begin because abstaining makes you very mindful. Whether it's alcohol addiction, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's a porno addiction, whether it's an addiction to toxicity, saying to yourself, I'm going to abstain is going to make you very mindful. I remember one day when I made the decision to stop drinking for a little while, and I said to myself, I don't have to drink. I'm driving my car. It's a beautiful day outside. It's springtime. I'm alone. I think I was off work that day. And usually when I was off work, I would have a couple drinks, take a nap, wake up, and go do what I had to do. And I remember I was driving around and I said to myself, I don't need to drink to have fun. Well, I can go for a walk. I can have a drink. Then I had to stop myself. I'm like, hold on, wait a second. I'm not drinking. And then I said, I could go in a house and work on some poetry. I can go in a house and work on a song. I could have a drink. Like my brain kept going back to having a drink. But because I decided to abstain from that, I became very mindful of how much I wanted to drink, and I was able to break that behavioral pattern. So give yourself something to abstain from. If you say I'm going to abstain from sex, because you know for a fact that there's a toxic person out there who, is great in bed, and they got, they got an hour of their time with your name on it. Then now you got to say to yourself, I'm going to abstain from those experiences. I'm going to abstain from that person. And then you're going to become very mindful. And once you become mindful, you build on that. And once you can build on being mindful, then you become able to notice the changes in your body and actually to begin to self-create. In ancient Kemet, there was a god called Amen, from which we get the term, amen when you pray. And the god Amen is considered to be a self-created god. He made himself. And you have to see yourself that way. For most of us, we are the result of circumstances, whether it be your abuse, your environment, poverty, pain, negative sexual experiences. We are the result of all the stuff that other people decided to do to us. When you tap into your own inner power, what happens is you become self-created by tapping into your own God force. And that's what I want you guys to do. Understand that everything that you are, if you've gone through trauma, everything that you are is the result of other people. All of it. And I don't want you to become an idolater. I don't want you to let that person who hurt you be your God. I don't want you to let the person who disrespected you be your God. I don't want you to let the person who abused you be your creator. That's idolatry. That's idolatry. Don't let that person become your God. You got to look within yourself and tap into your own God energy so you can self-create. I went through years of depression, and then I had to figure out how to self-create myself, change my identity. And I had to start sometimes from scratch, it feels like. Because I remember when I had that breakdown, that my panic attacks were so severe, my body felt drained. I had nothing left. And it was at that moment I said I could either break down right now and go crazy, or I could build myself back up. And it was a tough road. But if you're the kind of person where you don't like tough roads, you're not gonna be able to endure this. This is serious business. And you can be happy. You can. Why not? Once again, how do you believe you can be happy? Let's look at the science of it. If I can be happy, you can be happy. That's as scientific as you need to get. And Amber, we all got faith in you. And I'm thank you, everybody. Give yourselves a round of applause, because I like the fact that everybody in the live stream is really encouraging each other, building each other up, and you're having a conversation amongst yourselves to absorb all this. That's a beautiful thing. That's why I said I love doing these live streams. I love seeing people connect and support one another. You see so much anger in the world. There's so many people trying to tear each other down. I'll come here every week. I've been doing this for a while now. Simply because I love to see the support and the positivity. V2, you're very, very welcome. So going back to what I was saying, it's a tough process. In a lot of the theology that I've studied, they say that God created himself over the span of trillions of years. And it was painful, and it was agony. It was lonely. It was a tough experience. But is it, I feel like it's worth it to awaken that God energy within you. And leave all that fake joy and fake pleasure behind. And quite often you'll understand, like, you can be happy without the misery and the toxicity. You can live your life and smile and be happy in a relationship. And some of us might not believe that just yet. And maybe you need to speak to a therapist. Maybe you need to have a real conversation with some people who really care about you. But I'm telling you, people can be happy in relationships. They can overcome their trauma. I'm living proof you can overcome your trauma and retrain your brain and retrain your body. People who meditate, you change how you breathe, because you're more mindful of how you breathe when you study how the breath affects the body, and how the breath is a reflection of how you're feeling. Your mind, your body, your heart, and soul, they all work together as one. So when you have a negative thought, a negative emotion, that affects how you breathe. When you meditate, you change how you breathe, so you can change your mood. You become self-created, as opposed to something else happening outside of you, and you change how you breathe because you're scared or because you're angry. I'm going to control how I breathe. And I'm going to control my bodily reactions, and then I'm going to control the environment around me. Self-created, God energy. Remember what I said earlier, damage. What did I say about damage? Destructive appetites masking as godly energy. Learn how to see through that mask by becoming more mindful. That's right, and you're right. Trauma happens in life. It does not have to be a life sentence. Depression happens in life. As a matter of fact, you can take the word trauma and replace it with depression, anxiety, whatever you're going through. Alcoholism. You can replace it with anything. But the thing about it is, you have to understand the reality of what you want. You can overcome it. How can you overcome it? Well, if you can overcome it right here, right now, in this moment, you overcame it. There is no future. Don't worry about overcoming it in the future. The past is gone. You can't overcome nothing that happened in the past. All you have is right now. And if you can overcome it right now in this moment, guess what? You won. Now keep doing it every moment. And yes, it's going to be tough. For those of y'all who remember, I did a live stream where I was talking about the ancient Egyptian Book of Gates, right? And the ancient Egyptian Book of Gates, for those of y'all who might not know, who weren't there for that live stream, tells a story of what happens to the sun when the sun sets in the west, and then the sun goes to the underworld. And they believe, the ancient Egyptians, the Kemetics, they believe that your soul and the sun are one life force. They're connected. So whatever the sun does and goes through, you do it and you go through it too. So when the sun sets at night, right, he goes through the underworld. When you go to bed at night, they believe your soul will leave your body and go through the underworld. And what will be happening to your soul, or will be happening to the sun as it travels through the underworld? Well, first and foremost, the sun didn't make that journey alone. You don't have to make that journey alone. Who told you that? Who told you you had to make this journey alone? The sun don't travel through hell alone, and that's a God. You don't have to travel through the underworld alone. Who did he bring with him? He brought who was the god of magical utterances, and he brought with him Sia or Sa, the god of divine insight. So you're going to need somebody who has divine insight, who can see things you can't see, possibly a therapist, possibly a social worker, possibly just a close friend. And you're going to need somebody to speak on your behalf. Some wonderful silver-tongued devil who can speak to you and guide you along as you're going and speak for you too. When somebody who I know, I'm not gonna say who it was, they were dealing with mental health issues. I had to become their advocate. I had to speak up for them. And you can have the same thing. Why not? Who said you can't? Who said you don't deserve that? When you go through trauma, you believe so much about yourself that's not true. You think you don't deserve support. You think you got to do stuff alone. You think that nobody's gonna stand up for you. That's traumatized thinking. And that's right. So allies are always around when we surrender and open up to the healing. You're 100% correct. But and going back to the Book of Gates. So as the sun is traveling through the underworld, he's seeing monsters and he's seeing, Apep. Apep was the serpent who the Greeks referred to as Apophos. And Apophos was like this serpent in hell where he would bite you and then eat you, and then you would have a second death. Your spirit would even die. So he had to get through Apophos, and he had to get through the fields of fire and the river of fire and all of this stuff. And as he's going and traveling through the underworld, people would see him, the sun god, and they would call out to him and they would say, "All hail Ra, Men Ma'at Ra, the Lord of diadems." Because even in the underworld, the sun god needs somebody to boost his ego. And even when you're traveling through the underworld, you need that too. You are the way you are because other people spent their time and their energy telling you that you ain't good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. So you're going to need to have some people around you to tell you, yo, you can do this. You're going to need somebody who's going to say, you know what? I have faith in you. You're going to need somebody to say once in a while, yo, I love you. The sun god needed that. Because even in the midst of the darkness, it was so dark and so terrifying down there, the sun god would even forget who he was. So they had to tell him, all hail Ra, Men Ma'at Ra. They had to let him know, like, yo, you the sun god. And you need that too. You need that too. You can do this. Look at all the people who came here tonight just to have your back, just to support you. See it that way. When you read the Bible, see it that way. It was written for you. When you read the Quran, see it that way. That was written for you to help you get through the darkness. You might not even have somebody who's physically there with you, but you have other people from the past who gave you the light to make it through that darkness. And you might find inspiration in somebody else's story. Of course, it's good to have physical people around you, but if you're in an environment where your family's toxic and you got toxic friends, you might have to start off with something like that. Start off with a therapist who's going to give you encouragement and boost up your pride and your ego. But also look at these stories. All this work and all this effort that was written to empower you and uplift your soul. These books were not written to be entertainment and not even really written to be religious. They were written to save your soul. And it's okay to understand it that way. People are putting in work and putting in effort to save you, to support you. You might not see them. You might not even know them. But you deserve that. You don't deserve nothing less than that. And you might think of yourself as somebody who's way down in the dirt. Well, guess what? There's people who are reaching down there trying to pull you up out of the grave. Individuals who I didn't even know were sending messages trying to pull me up out of the grave. And I'm not talking about in a spooky sense, but studying the history of great leaders and great thinkers. They pulled me out the grave. Like, oh, wow, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. Oh, this is a new perspective. And they pulled me up out of the grave. They put in all this work, wrote all these books, wrote all these poems, had all these divine insights, had all these debates, standing up for justice, standing up for righteousness. For who? For me. You can say, oh, that sounds arrogant. Yeah, it is arrogant. You know, I am arrogant. I'd rather be arrogant and think that all these messages are written to empower me and lift me up than to go around believing I don't deserve no love. Elizabeth, thank you for the donation. And we're here tonight. That's why Insight Timer is cool. You got people from all around the world who are here to lift each other up and empower each other. And I want you guys to believe you can change. How can you believe you can change? Simply by understanding that change. And I said this before. You got to understand change is inevitable. Nothing stays the same. Why is it that we have such a hard time believing that we can change when everything in the universe changes? You're going to change whether you want to or not. You can either be in charge of how you change, or you just let it happen. If you just let it happen and you're in a toxic environment, you're going to change for the worse. Or you can make that struggle and make that first step to empower yourself and become more mindful so that you can change and become a healthier, happier person. And it can be done. And remember what I told you. If you're going through depression, you're going through anxiety, you've gone through trauma, I'll tell you up front, your mind is a liar. I told y'all I used to write songs. That's a good quote, and I like that. We're all here to walk each other home. And I used to write songs. I had a line in a song where I said, my mind's a deceiver, my eyes are deceivers, my mind is a liar. My eyes are deceivers, my mind is a liar tonight. I can't sing. I love to sing though. But anyhow, my whole point is this. If you're a person who's going through depression or anxiety, your mind's going to play tricks on you. That's why it's good to tap into it's good to tap into that state of being the observer. When you meditate, you learn how to actually watch yourself and see yourself, because your mind will lie to you. Especially if you've been depressed for 10 years, if you've been depressed for 20 years, if you've been abused when you were a little kid, your mind is going to lie to you. And so many people get caught in the trap of the mind maze. They feel like, well, I can't change. Your mind will lie to you. That's how you got to learn how to see beyond the mind. The rapper Nas, my favorite rapper ever, he had a line where he said, beyond the walls of intelligence, life is defined. Your intelligence, your mind will lie to you. You got to tap into a level of consciousness and mindfulness where you actually learn how to watch your own mind. It got to the point I used to watch my own mind. When I used to meditate, my mind would be running wild, and I would think to myself, oh my God, why can't I stop these thoughts? But then when you meditate, you tap into a level of consciousness where you can sit back and watch these thoughts and learn about yourself. And you don't have to have those, you train yourself so you won't have to have those emotional reactions to every single thought, because your brain is a thought-thinking machine. That's what it's designed to do, to think thoughts incessantly, absorb information, and recycle it incessantly. It doesn't stop. Your brain don't sleep. Even when you asleep, your brain is still functioning to keep your heart beating and keep you breathing and to have dreams. So even when you asleep, your brain is still working. So your brain, because it works all the time, it's a great liar. It don't stop lying. That's why you got to tap into your inner G, your inner power, that inner God, so you can see truth for what it is. And study the science of this. Study the science of meditation and how it works. I study the science of it. I've seen peer-reviewed studies where they show that meditation is great for PTSD. I've seen studies where it shows that certain kinds of breath work are great for anxiety and great for depression. And I've used my own body and my own brain as the laboratory to experiment with these things. And so once I learn how to be mindful, I'll learn how to play around with my own brain a little bit. And I made a lot of changes in my life. And there's still more work to be done. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, a spoonful of is going to change everything in your life. It takes a lot of work and a lot of self-awareness and a lot of reality. And that's one thing that a lot of people can't handle. Like I said before, we've been trained to chase our dreams in this life, but none of us have been trained to how to deal with reality. But once you're able to see things as they are, you're able to deal with that reality. And once you can deal with the reality without the drinking, without the drugs, without the self-pity, without giving in to all of your sexual impulses, once you're able to do that, the whole universe opens up. The greatest sin is fear and giving up. Nas, Mel, thank you for that. Nas is the GOAT. I don't care what nobody say. Nas is the GOAT. Ain't nobody better than Nas. But going back to what we were saying, it's possible to heal. And if you don't believe me, fine, don't. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to know. I did a live stream a little while ago called Know in Yourself. I want you to know. Explore the concepts. Explore the science. Go get a book about meditation. Go get a book about mindfulness. Read some peer-reviewed articles about it. See it. There's a quote in the Bible where Jesus Christ is talking and he's telling everybody what he believes. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, Jesus. Sounds good, Jesus. We don't know. Jesus was like, okay, taste and see that it is good. Taste it. Don't let your mind lie to you and tell you nothing's ever going to change. Don't let your mind, that's a lie. Nothing's ever going to change. Everything changes all the time. Your mind will lie to you and say, well, you're unhappy. You've been unhappy this long. You're never going to change. What? Who told you that? You got to show me the scientific data to prove that. That's why I don't really watch TV. I don't do a whole lot of debating with nobody. I'm a real science. I try to be scientific. I'm emotional. I'm passionate. Y'all see that. But I'm like, yo, show me your science. This is what you believe? Okay, I get it. Show me your science. I was talking to this one guy. I was debating with him about something, and I hate doing this. I was debating with him on Facebook. I swore I would never do this, but every now and again somebody say something dumb enough where I gotta hop in. The big guy gotta hop in. The bearded one gotta hop in sometimes. And I hopped in and I'm debating with this guy. And he's like, I said, have you studied this and done the research on this? Because I have. He said, I don't need to do the research. I don't need the research. Like another person I was debating with them about something. Swore I wouldn't do it, did it again. I'm debating with the person. I said, well, science shows this, the facts show this. And the guy actually said to me, well, you can't always trust facts. Facts ain't always real. But my whole point is this. Learn to pick up the habit of studying and doing the research so you won't have to believe. I want you to know. And if you are not the kind of person to study and do research, do the experiment. Taste and see that it is good. I cook food. I'm learning how to be a better chef. I used to believe that I couldn't cook. But over the last couple of months, I've been cooking more. I want to eat healthier. So I've been cooking more. But I got 2 sons, 7 and 5. They don't want to eat nothing. They eat spaghetti, but they eat spaghetti. They only want butter on the spaghetti noodles. They don't want sauce. So I'm always trying to cook stuff and say, just try it. Can you just try it? Just try a little bite. Try a little piece. They won't even try my spaghetti sauce, which is delicious. It's amazing. But they won't even try it. But I don't want you guys to be like my 7-year-old or my 5-year-old. I want you to taste and see that it's good. If you don't want to go read the books, sit down and be mindful for 5 minutes. You don't have to do no in-depth meditation experiment because it's your first time meditating. Just ease into it. And train yourself to be mindful first and foremost, because if you do have those experiences, like somebody was mentioning how they were hyperventilating and how I had an experience when I was meditating where some repressed memories came up, you can keep yourself safe and keep yourself from going off the deep end by learning how to train your mind and be 100% focused on the present moment. That's why it's important for me, at least, to start off with mindfulness meditation. And that's the key. Taste and see that it is good. And give yourself a timeline. Don't be one of them individuals who tries it once and says, hey, it didn't work. I'm done forever. You want to taste it? Try it. Yeah, same thing with me. Rachel. Am I saying your name right? Is it Rachel? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm saying it wrong. I'm butchering your name. But yeah, same thing with me. It helped me deal with my anxiety and my depression, and it was very severe. A focused mind is exactly a focused mind is a relaxed mind. For the most part, many of us don't live in an environment where we're surrounded by constant danger. And I grew up in a hood where I seen people get shot and stabbed and all of that stuff. And that was very traumatic for me. But when I started meditating and being mindful, I'm able to kind of like navigate those tough situations and and like I said, like Rochelle. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And sorry I butchered your name. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Exactly. And also the apostle Paul too said that when you die and get resurrected and go to heaven, you'll be given a new mind and a new body. And the most honorable Elijah Muhammad says, seek yourself in heaven at once. So that new mind and that new body, you can have it now. You ain't gotta die and get it later on. You can have that right now. So, and I know this was a long conversation. I had some more notes, but I wanted to answer everybody's questions, and I think just the energy back and forth was beautiful. I think the energy back and forth was absolutely beautiful. So maybe it's one of those instances where I didn't need the notes really. Ashley, thank you for the donation. So everybody, I'm gonna be back here next week. I really enjoyed this conversation. Next week I'm going to be doing another one. I think next week's subject is going to be I'm going to be doing something about the self as a portal for God. We all want to get to know God and get close to God, but we never really take the time to understand ourselves first and foremost. And I think that by studying yourself and learning yourself, you can get closer to God. Now, I'll go a little bit more in depth about that. I think that's what I'm going to talk about next week. So I'm going to put that up probably. If I decide to do that, I'll put that up probably. And hopefully you guys, everybody who showed up tonight, hopefully you guys will attend again next week. I appreciate the donations. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for the donations. And yeah, next week let's come back and do the same thing and uplift each other and empower each other. And if anybody has any questions, any comments, you can definitely share that next week. Melissa, thank you for the donation. I appreciate all of y'all. I appreciate all the donations. I appreciate the love. More than anything, I appreciate the support of each other. You guys are amazing for that. You guys are amazing for that. I'm gonna say one thing. I'm gonna say one thing before I go. Abby, thank you so much. I'm gonna say one more thing before I go. Y'all know I'm a big softie. Y'all know I'm a big crier. I be crying. I ain't gonna lie. I'm a big 250 some odd pound dude with a beard. I be crying, man. I mean, sometimes when something is really beautiful, I be crying. I feel like I'm about to cry because y'all all supported each other. I'm about to cry. Let me get out of here before I break down in tears. All right, y'all. I'm gonna see y'all next week. Please come back next week. This is an amazing experience. I love y'all. Peace and blessings to everybody. Alexis, you joined late. I'm in Maryland. You just follow me. All right, well, I'll see you next week. Okay. Yeah, everybody be safe, be blessed, and keep uplifting each other. You know what I'm saying? Keep building each other up. It's a beautiful world. You look at the outside world, you see everybody else at each other's throats, and in here you see nothing but people trying to empower each other. Let me get out. I'm start crying. Let me get out of here. Good night to y'all. I love y'all. Peace. Peace and blessings to everybody who joined. I'll see y'all next week.